I'm Mr. Beat. I'm here in Stanton, Virginia, a lovely little city in the Shenandoah Valley. But like most American towns, no matter where you go, you see churches like this one everywhere. And this one, and this one, or this one. You get the idea. There are approximately 370,000 churches in the United States, and of these, around 332,000 are Christian churches. Oh, you want a percentage? 90% of American religious buildings are Christian, which is no surprise because, yeah, the biggest religion in the United States is Christianity, the religion based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's a church now, probably. It is. Thank you for doing that. Perfect timing. You don't have to keep going. It's also the biggest religion in the world, but focus here, brother. In this video, we're talking about the United States. What about this thing called Christian nationalism? What about it?
I would say this, I know this can be offensive to some people. I believe our nation was founded upon Christian principles and founded upon the Word. I mean, you can look at the Bible and you can find, okay, it was primarily our founding fathers were believers in the Lord Jesus Christ.
You can transform the culture and change its direction just as much as Hollywood has already changed the direction of our Christian nation.
This is a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian ethics. Above my courtroom it read, "In God we trust."
That if we actually go back to our Christian roots and we go back to where we once were, it's America's best hope for revival.
So while the media is going to lie about you and label Christian nationalism, and they're probably going to call it domestic terrorism.
Well, yeah, it's been brought up a lot lately. So I guess I ought to explain it since I like to explain stuff so gosh darn much.
My name is David Congdon. I'm an editor at the University Press of Kansas, but I'm also a theologian and scholar of religion and politics.
Oh yeah, Dave is going to help me explain it too. We'll explain what it is, where it came from, and why so many gosh darn people keep talking about it lately. Did you know that your personal data is sold online by data brokers? Anyone can buy your personal details. Yes, even your enemies, who could get your personal information to dox you or stalk you or even harass you. Well, I personally recommend that you use Delete Me to make sure that your personal information stays private. What I like about Delete Me is that it sends you these personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they deleted. I've been using Delete Me for a long time now, and it's done a pretty good job scrubbing my personal information from all kinds of shady sites on the internet. Let's go ahead and look at my dashboard here. As you can see, they looked at 111 data brokers, and of the 2,945 listings reviewed, 23 data brokers had my personal information, man. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/MrBeat and use promo code MrBeat at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/MrBeat, code MrBeat, and would you look at that? It's Mr. QR code. I'd scan you any day. Thanks to Delete Me for once again sponsoring this video. Christian nationalism is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity. But I'll let David break it down even more. Go ahead, David. David.
I would define Christian nationalism as an ideology that fuses American political identity with Christian identity. There are two major versions of Christian nationalism. One group says that America was originally a Christian nation and it needs to be recovered. That identity as a Christian nation has to be restored. The other one says that America was never a Christian nation, and so it has to be reconstituted today to fulfill its true identity as a Christian nation.
Basically, some Christian nationalists believe the United States was founded as a Christian nation.
Folks, we were founded as a Christian nation. Right. You can't erase that from our history. People try, but they can't do it.
Right. Or that it should have a Christian form of government.
America should be a Christian nation.
And not just any form of Christianity, usually a very specific kind of fundamentalist Protestantism. Protestantism. Christian nationalism says American laws, institutions, and even identity should reflect Christian beliefs, often through government action.
Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters says schools need to go further. He has ordered all schools to incorporate the Bible and 10 Commandments into curriculum for grades 5 through 12. And now he says he's purchased 500 Bibles. The elected Republican's ultimate goal? Put one in every Oklahoma classroom.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. I don't know how far back we want to go. Maybe we want to go all the way back, but the historical roots of Christian nationalism.
I would go pretty far back. I go back at least to the Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, early 16th century, I think really set the path to Christian nationalism. Effectively what that did was it created a conflict between Catholics, Lutherans, and the Calvinists. And they all began to fight with each other to see who was going to control the territory of the Holy Roman Empire. The principle was established later that century that whoever ruled a particular region, they got to pick the religion of that region. And we see effectively the origins of the nation state in that division of the empire up into these different units that are defined by a religious identity. And that's effectively where we see Christian nationalism in action. And a lot of today's Christian nationalists long for those days where you had a ruler who could say, we're Christian nation, you all are going to be Christian because I'm Christian. That sort of homogeneity of the country, of the nation.
It's not too far-fetched because you look at the Islamic world, there's plenty of theocracies.
Absolutely, and that's precisely what they would want on the Christian side in many ways.
The idea that the United States has a special relationship with Christianity goes way back. In fact, many of the early colonists came to North America to set up their own Christian society based on their own interpretation of the Bible, the holy book of Christianity.
The Puritan colonizers established theocracies. Those early colonies were theocracies in their view. Rhode Island is really unique in being one that was open to any religious belief. It was truly secular in that sense. But otherwise, there was a strong theocratic idea among those early colonies.
In colonial America, religion and government were like peanut butter and jelly. If jelly could, throw you in prison for not going to church. Most of the 13 American colonies had official Protestant Christian churches. In most of them, you had to pass a religious test and declare a religious faith, usually Protestant Christianity, of course, in order to hold public office or even vote. Here in Virginia, the Church of England was the established church. Even members of other Protestant denominations, like Baptists and Presbyterians, faced discrimination and persecution. But not everyone here in Virginia liked the idea of government and religion mixing. Famously, future Declaration of Independence writer and President Thomas Jefferson called for the separation of church and state and the establishment of religious freedom for all citizens. He'd create a bill, which eventually James Madison helped get passed in 1786, that did just that. It made the Church of England no longer the established church in Virginia and guaranteed religious freedom to all Virginians, even non-Christians, like Muslims, Jews, and Hindus. That bill, called the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, was big time influential on the First Amendment. Flash forward to 1787. You remember 1787, don't you? Wait, you don't? You don't? That's when the founding father dudes got together to create a new constitution. In fact, the Constitution that so many Americans love and cherish today. Most of those men were, in fact, Christians. Some of those men were devout Christians who often quoted the Bible, but the most influential men there had absolutely no interest in making the United States a theocracy, or a type of government in which religious leaders rule based on their religious beliefs and values. Benjamin Franklin strongly opposed using the government to prop up religion, as did George Washington, who once said, quote, "Every man ought to be protected in worshiping the deity according to the dictates of his own conscience." Heck, even James Madison, the freaking father of the Constitution, talked trash about the government favoring or establishing a single religion. Quote, "Who does not see that the same authority which can establish Christianity and exclude exclusion of all other religions, may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians, an exclusion of all other sects? And I couldn't find any evidence that any of the other Founding Father dudes tried to change their minds. Everyone at the Constitutional Convention was pretty much on the same page regarding mixing Christianity with the government. None of them tried to establish the United States as an explicitly Christian nation, bro. Like, not even a little bit. And if you look at the Constitution, it's an entirely secular document. Secular just means not religious. Not once does it mention God, Jesus, or Christianity. And when it does bring up religion, it's like, bruh, leave religion out of this. Article 6, Clause 3 of the Constitution says, quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. And then later, for good measure, the Founding Father dudes added the beloved First Amendment, which says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So basically, the Constitution says that the federal government can't create a national religion or interfere with religious practice. It's not actually in the Constitution explicitly that there's this wall of separation of church and state.
The wall of separation is an idea that, especially from Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, who was a strong proponent of separating church and state.
And actually, I think he literally said that line too, right?
Yes, he did, yes. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they were very strong proponents of a society that was not based on any religious affiliation or identity, because they were all very concerned about the way Europe had created tests for blasphemy and heresy. For them, the wars of religion that I was talking about regarding in the Reformation era with the Catholics and Lutherans and Calvinists all fighting with each other, they thought that was the problem. Their vision of America was a society that didn't have those religious divisions and religious violence.
By the way, I was right. Jefferson did coin the phrase, wall of separation between church and state, with his letter to the Danbury Baptist Association. Okay, so the Constitution was a secular document, but that didn't mean the United States wasn't dominated by Christianity culturally. So, Christian nationalism again, on the other side, and the early years of the country, where are we seeing that?
We're seeing that happen especially in the South, in particular, views there about Anglican and other Christian identities there connected to their Southern identity. Southern Presbyterians and others are very strongly Christian nationalists in a way that's more prominent than in the North, which leads into the Civil War divisions there.
The term Christian nationalism has only been around for about 20 years, but that didn't mean it didn't exist in the 1800s.
It's all the way through. Christian nationalism means different things in different times. It can be wedded to different political views at different points. It's anachronistic. Obviously, none of them called themselves Christian nationalists at that time. But in retrospect, we might see that there's a version of Christian nationalism there. There was a big move for about 100 years to create a Christian amendment to the Constitution. This lasted from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. And there was a campaign to add an amendment to the Constitution certifying that the United States is a Christian nation. And it failed, and it fizzled out by the time that Eisenhower became president. But that was a big movement for a long time.
You said it fizzled out when Eisenhower became president.
One of the first things Eisenhower does when he becomes president is get baptized. He's the first president to ever be baptized while president. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a big show of Christianity, of Christian nationalism, we might say now. But then that's what we see in God We Trust, the Pledge of Allegiance. We see the National Prayer Breakfast get started then as well. So a lot of these public displays of Christianity become prominent with the Eisenhower presidency. And at that point, there's a shift. It used to be that it was common knowledge that the Constitution was a godless secular document. At that point, the idea that the Constitution is actually a divinely ordained, truly Christian document becomes more widespread.
Yep, during the Second Red Scare, a period of hysteria and paranoia over the perceived threat of the Soviet Union and communism in general, the federal government began to more openly embrace Christian symbols as a way to counter the Soviet Union's attack on not just Christianity, but religion in general. In 1954, Congress added "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. In 1956, it made "In God We Trust" the official national motto. It was basically just an easy way to contrast with the godless communists in the Soviet Union. Jump ahead to the 1970s, and a new movement began that mixed Christianity and politics. The moral majority. Led by folks like the influential Baptist minister Jerry Falwell, it played a pretty important role in mobilizing conservative Christians as a political force. This is when you got a big push to get Christian prayer back in public schools, for example. By the way, the Supreme Court had already ruled that prayer in public schools was already unconstitutional in the case Engel v. Vitale, which I made a video about. I think. That was a long time ago. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Oh yeah, there it is. Hi. Cases like Abington School District v. Schempp and Lemon v. Kurtzman also further built up separation of church and state, and the moral majority was at least partially a reaction to those decisions. Your top 3 most influential Christian nationalists in American history.
This is tough, but
yeah.
My top 3, I think, in terms of influence, it goes by influence more than by public knowledge. First one would be John Winthrop. So he's the person who preaches the City on a Hill sermon. He wasn't influential in his time, but he became influential in the 19th century when the City on a Hill sermon became circulated more widely as part of this campaign to spread this idea about America. It doesn't really happen until the 20th century, effectively. My second person may be unknown to a lot of people, but I think is maybe the most important. That is Robert Louis Dabney. Dabney was a Southern theologian and professor. He was a Confederate chaplain. He wrote many of the core ideas that became prominent later on with religious right. For instance, he had a piece against secular public education and in favor of homeschooling. Throughout his writings, he has this idea, this line, this is almost verbatim, but when something is non-Christian, it's actually anti-Christian. So Dabney's important. And the third person I'm gonna pick, there's a lot of more recent figures. You can talk about Falwell or Rushdoony or others. I'm gonna talk about C. Peter Wagner. Peter Wagner is not a household name, but what he did was he brought together the charismatic Pentecostal side of Christianity to be a force for Christian nationalism. His ideas and his teachings and his network eventually produced what we now call the New Apostolic Reformation. And that is a global network of millions and millions of people. It's maybe the largest faction of Christianity today, growing in size. And that's where we get a lot of these charismatic Pentecostal prosperity preachers and teachers, especially on YouTube and other influencers.
So today, what do Christian nationalists typically believe? If you already know the answer to this question, you should still watch anyway and see if I agree with you. Because you could be wrong. I could be wrong too. Sources, as always, in the description. They believe the United States is or ought to be a Christian nation. They do not like the separation of church and state. They believe the Bible should inform American laws and public policy. They want prayer, the 10 Commandments, and heck, even crosses in public schools. And some even want Christianity declared as the official religion of the country. Most also are against pluralism, or the idea that people of different religious beliefs and social groups can live in the same society.
We can't defeat Christian nationalism, and we can't oppose Christian nationalism by trying to emphasize the First Amendment. The most important way to address Christian nationalism is to reaffirm and find new ways to support democratic ideals and a pluralistic vision of society. Pluralism is really the enemy of Christian nationalism, not church and state separation.
I'm hoping by this point in the video you understand why Christian nationalism scares a lot of Americans. Most Americans don't want a theocracy. Most Americans love pluralism. Christian nationalism goes against the Constitution, which is an explicitly secular document. And by linking Americaness to just one religion, it marginalizes all other people who are not Christian. Remember how at the beginning of the video I said that Christianity was the biggest religion in the United States? Please tell me you remember that. Well, 4 out of 10 Americans are not Christian. More and more churches like these have been losing membership. This likely explains why Christian nationalists have been pretty loud lately. Simply put, they are afraid of losing their influence. But what do you think? Did I miss anything about Christian nationalism? I'm sure I did. Let me know, for sure. Let's go. Thanks to David for letting me interview him for this video. Be sure to check out his book in the description of this video, along with all the other sources I referenced. Thanks for staying curious. Bye. Okay.